As someone who never grew up with an NES or Super Nintendo, Contra was always a series I looked at from afar and thought, man, would have been cool to grow up in that era of co-op games. It wasn't until I watched Giant Bomb play through the original Contra that I really felt I had missed out on the pure chaotic fun of this series. But as luck would have it, Nintendo decided to release the Super Nintendo Classic, bundle it with 2 controllers, and put Contra 3 The Alien Wars on it. My experience with this game is one weekend where myself and Bally blasted our way through alien after alien, learning as we went and liberally abusing save states. I've talked already about the bullshit of old video games, and Contra is the head of state when it comes to that. But the thing is, even though it's super punishing and unfair, it's just so much fun. We would come up with roles for each other, who would get what weapon and what to do for each boss fight. It felt like a tactics game where we would have to pause and make a game plan for what we needed to do before going into each part. This may be the first and only Contra game I've played, but I guarantee it won't be the last. I remember the first time I saw Super Monkey Ball. I was at my second cousin's house when I was around 11 years old. He was quite a bit younger and had some really bad GameCube games, including a Scooby-Doo platformer that just terrible. However, as soon as he popped in Super Monkey Ball, I was hooked. There really is nothing quite like Monkey Ball, and sadly the series has never been the same since the first 2 GameCube entries. I played both the DS and Wii games, and they were fine, but never really lived up to the magnificence of Super Monkey Ball 2. This game had it all, from an incredibly hard single player that I still haven't finished, to time trials and practicing individual courses, to the suite of mini-games that I know many folks played even more than the main game itself. It's been such a long time since I've played Monkey Ball 2, but I can still recall individual levels that haunt me, ones that I've tried hundreds of times and still have no idea how to finish. But that's the joy of this game. It's as much a puzzle to be solved as it is a path to be conquered. Having both dexterity and wits about you is essential. I also appreciate certain levels that give you risk versus reward paths, where a much wider track will often be complemented by a much harder, thinner one that has a truckload of bananas on it to incentivize you to take on the challenge. This multi-tiered difficulty is something more games should do. Ultimately, I just want Sega to remake these games in HD and put them on Switch. So please, Sega, make me happy for once. Roguelike. It's a name that has gained more familiarity and a genre that has gained more traction in recent years. However, there are very few games of this ilk that resonate with me. I think that as someone who likes progressing in games, roguelikes are just antithetical to my priorities. Going on a quote-unquote run, only to be cut short and just restart with nothing to your name, just isn't that appealing to me. Rogue Legacy is a rare exception. It does have a rogue structure, but many people dub it a roguelite instead, because much of the goal of this game is to take money that you accumulate in the castle and spend it on permanent upgrades that will eventually make your character strong enough to beat all the bosses and make it to the end. And even that goes against the roguelike structure somewhat, as bosses that you have killed will stay defeated. But the reason I kept playing this game is because it felt so damn good. The level of control you have is immaculate and employs the Castlevania trick of candles that you smash to get money, meaning you're always using your sword even in non-enemy situations. My favourite is the down slash that can activate certain platforms but can also allow you to bounce on enemies DuckTales style. Each new character is a descendant of the previous one that died, and all of them come with unique traits that affect gameplay, from being colorblind that turns the screen all grayscale, to having vertigo, which literally makes you play upside down. These twists add another differential to each run. If you don't like roguelikes, Rogue Legacy may just be the one for you. I've told the story many times that the reason I even played Bayonetta 2 is because of the demo that came out a month before its launch. I was convinced in about 10 minutes that, yeah, this is a thing I want to play. That opening level is one hell of a gambit, going from flying atop a fighter jet to soaring through the sky beating up a skyscraper-sized dragon within no time. And from there it only goes up. You think, but how? How can they top what came before? And time again, Platinum manages to exceed expectations. I've never been a character action fan. In fact, this was my first foray into the genre, and it's a bit of an unfair place to start because not much else is better than Bayonetta 2. It feels so sublime, as you slow down time with perfect dodges and then counterattack as hard as you can. To some degree, it feels like playing Smash Brothers, hence why Bayonetta's inclusion in Nintendo's Fighter works so well. Similar to first-person shooters, I play these types of games on easy, as to be quite frank, I'm not here for learning combos or getting S ranks. I just want to feel powerful and see some cool shit happen. And boy, does cool shit happen in this game. It really is the spectacle that I'm after, and Bayonetta 2 doesn't slow down with its promise of screen-filling fights that will have your jaw on the ground. It's not my type of game, but it sure as hell showed me that going outside your comfort zone can lead to amazing experiences. It's hard to convey the brilliance of Into the Breach without playing it. On the surface, it's a deceptively simple tactics game, but the layers of depth that it hides are unfathomable. Put simply, you have a group of 3 mechs, and on each turn you have to save buildings from swarms of alien bugs to make sure that Earth's population can keep surviving. Sounds simple, right? They even show you where each enemy will attack each turn, so you can counteract it accordingly. But what do you do when you have 6 bugs and there are only 3 of you? This is where you have to get tactical and really understand the way systems overlay and interact with each other. Movement is the name of the game here, and it is often more about not letting the enemies attack rather than killing the enemies themselves. Sure, you'll be rewarded for doing harder side objectives by killing every enemy on the map, but more often than not, keeping your buildings intact by pushing enemies out of range is easier and more beneficial in the long run. It can lead to amazing turns like this one, where I'm faced with 5 enemies. 3 of them I lightning zap in a chain, then I grab one and kill it by dropping it in the water, and finally stop the remaining enemy from hitting his shot by dropping a rock in front of him. Turns like that epitomise what is so satisfying and cool about this game. Each mech team is completely different as well, so you won't get tired of playing it with the same strategies. It is so refined and brilliant, and also has fantastic pixel art, so it's a thumbs up from me. Your first Animal Crossing will always be your favourite. It's not necessarily a hard and fast rule, but it is true often enough that I believe it, and it is certainly the case for me, because Wild World is for sure my favourite Animal Crossing game. This game was so different from anything I played before, and yet fit my preferred aesthetic perfectly. This was a video game without danger, where you could do so many fun little things. I remember hours spent just making patterns at the Able Sisters shop, as I copied down pixel art versions of Link and Sonic from the internet, which I could then use as floor tiles. I remember making the Metroid jingle my town theme, and decorating my house with all the Nintendo memorabilia possible. You have to also keep in mind that things like fishing, fossil hunting and bug catching were all completely new to me, and bug catching in particular gave me Pokemon Gold vibes, so I would often enter those contests more often than the others. But the DS was also Nintendo's first crack at online, and it was so cool to invite friends around to your town where you could give each other fruit and trade items. I played this game more than any other Animal Crossing, and more than I probably ever will with another game in the series. It is a unique capsule in time, but I will always remember it fondly. I feel like I reference Super Meat Boy more than any other video game. It is the quintessential modern platformer. You know that whole thing where you die a ton, respawn instantly, have no life system to worry about? Yeah, that all came from Super Meat Boy. This game really refines what is important to me in this genre and then steps it up to 11. It's about short bursts of intense platforming that test your dexterity, but also your improvisation, as there is enough randomness in stages for it not to be rote memorization every time. One of my favourite things about this game is how it leaves the weird meat blood from the titular Meat Boy all over the parts of the stage that you've traversed even after you die, which means that you always know when you've gotten to a part you've not done yet. And when you do finally get to the end of a level, you see this army of your own Meat Boys all go at once, showing you the various ways in which you died and where in the stage each attempt got to. I think in recent years there have been games that have done Meat Boy better, and that's inevitable. Iteration is always going to lead to improving what came before. In that sense, this game has dropped down my list somewhat, but I still can't deny the impact this game had, not only on the industry as one of the most important games in the initial indie movement, but also on me as someone who never truly connected with platformers until Super Meat Boy. You can argue with me for days, but no, you are wrong. Mario Kart 7 is in fact empirically the best Mario Kart game. This is pure science, people. You don't debate science. So why do I like Mario Kart 7 so much? Well, I think I personally gravitated towards the Mario Kart series more in its handheld iterations than its console. Mario Kart DS was way better than Mario Kart Wii in my books, and I think that's just because of the smaller screen that made it easier for me to stay on the track. The circle pad only improved this on 3DS, and the controls feel sublime. They are by far the best feeling Mario Kart controls in the series, and the speed with which you build boosts feels like the perfect balance. It also had the best assortment of new tracks in Mario Kart history. Melody Motorway and Alpine Pass are particular standouts, but the Woohoo Island tracks are also fantastic, and I'm a big fan of Shy Guy's Bazaar. They did a great job of mixing things up whilst making tracks that could easily translate to newer iterations. The gimmick was also not too intrusive and made for really varied course design with underwater and aerial sections that were a lot of fun to traverse. I was never a fan of bikes, so I'm glad they went in a direction that focused more on the courses than the races. And yes, the 3D is great in this game. It looks absolutely stunning. Ultimately, I just have very specific wants when it comes to Mario Kart, and 7 fulfills practically all of them. It is tremendously hard to surprise people with video games in 2019. Practically everything has been done, but again and again, independent creators make things that make you step back and marvel at the possibilities of our medium. Gorgoa is a prime example of a game that completely upends expectations. It is close to impossible to describe, but essentially you are moving panels around a screen that can be zoomed in and out of to create situations where you move objects from one panel to another. That is incredibly reductive though, because how Gorgoa does this and the artistry on display with every movement is just stunning. The game is gorgeous and has phenomenal animation that lends this sense of tangibility to the panels and what lays hidden within them. I remember spending a couple of hours working my way through it on iPad, and this is one of those games that I'd recommend playing on a touch-based device or PC, as so much of the experience is enhanced by the control scheme. But for me, the puzzle difficulty was pitched perfectly. There are certainly moments that you get stuck, but I was always able to overcome them without looking anything up. And when you understand what the game wants you to do, you feel smarter than you probably should. There will be people who just don't jive with this type of puzzle solving, but for me it was perfect, and is one of the most sublimely well designed games I've ever played. Awah! I miss Wario. It's been so long since we've been given a Wario platformer, and that is a crying shame, because the last one we got, Wario Land Shake Dimension, or as it's more commonly known in America, Wario Land Shake It, is among the best platformers to ever come out of Nintendo. Following in the footsteps of Wario Land 4, this is a game of two halves. The first section of a level is often slower, more exploration-based, asking you to solve puzzles, and then the second half is a race, a platforming-focused escape sequence where Wario has to get back to the start. What Goodfeel made was an absolutely stunning video game that even in 480p on the Wii made me marvel at its astonishing art design. It is one of the best looking games Nintendo has made, and I would kill to see this style again in HD. The motion controls are also pretty unintrusive, and oftentimes really clever. I love tilting it to aim where Wario would throw an enemy, and there's a certain satisfaction to just shaking the shit out of a bag of coins. But it is the level design and the way in which each area is built for two purposes that really sells me on how smart this game is. You need two routes through a lot of these levels, and seeing how they were able to weave it all together is pretty crazy. This game would be on my list for animation and art alone, but pair that with a really fun and unique style of platformer, and you have one of the best games of the Wii generation.